Hi everyone, today I want to show you how to make savory pork floss cookies. These are different from your usual and cute and tasty, so watch on to see how to make them. These are the ingredients. I'll let you pause and read or refer to the description box below. I also have an alternative sweet filling if you're not feeling like savory. The first step is 85 grams of unsalted butter at room temperature. As you can see, my butter is still a little bit stiff, but I went on to add the icing sugar. Now use icing sugar instead of granulated sugar because this gives a more tender texture. And using a whisk, try to mix them together. Because my butter was slightly cold, I just dunked it in warm water and it mixed together nicely. Once the butter and sugar are mixed together, the next step is to add ricotta cheese. This adds to the savoriness of the cookie, and make sure your cheese is at room temperature or else your butter is going to just stiffen up once you add the cheese. So whisk that in together. Once that's mixed, add your salt and baking powder and then whisk well together as well. Before you add the flour in the next step, it's best to switch back to a spatula as the dough will get too thick for a whisk. So again, I'm using barley flour. You can use cake flour or pastry flour or even all-purpose flour. Barley flour just also adds to a more tender dough because it has less gluten than all-purpose flour. And I don't know if you'd like to hear this, but barley flour also has the added benefit of fiber without giving that extra gritty mouthfeel or taste. So I try to use barley flour whenever I can. For this recipe also, if you choose to use all-purpose flour as a base, you can substitute up to half of the flour with rye flour or buckwheat flour or spelt flour or any other special flours of your choice. They usually tend to work out pretty well in this recipe. And you can switch to using your hand to finish mixing the dough. As you can see, I'm wearing gloves just because the dough is kind of sticky and soft. If you find that the dough is too sticky and you have trouble working with it, you can always add a spoonful of extra flour or place it in the fridge to let the butter firm up a bit. Next, you want to roll the dough into a large rectangle about 30 centimeters by 20 centimeters and half a centimeter in thickness. As you can see, I like to roll between two pieces of plastic wrap. This just makes the whole process a lot cleaner. You don't have to add extra flour or worry about the dough sticking to your rolling pin. You can also roll between two pieces of baking paper or just on your work surface, making sure that it's well floured. You should also keep moving, flipping and rotating your dough as you roll, just to prevent it from sticking to the surface. Once your dough is big enough, trim off the edges to make a neat rectangle. If you don't want to trim all the edges, make sure you trim the long edge that's closest to you, as that's the edge that you start rolling and you want it to be a neat one. Then sprinkle over your pork floss. This is just regular dried pork floss. You can also use the one with the sesame seeds and the seaweed. You don't have to use the crispy one because these are going to toast in the oven. And altogether you need about 2/3 of a cup. Try to press on the pork floss with a rolling pin before you roll, just to prevent things from flying out. And then when you roll, start with the long edge closest to you and pinch down the first centimeter or so really tightly. It doesn't matter if it's not quite a circular pattern at first, because when you roll, it'll end up being neat and circular. So make sure that there are no gaps in between and you have a very tight roll. And when you slice the cookies, it helps the cookies not fall apart. And just on the outside, more for decoration, but also for flavor, you want to mix 2 tablespoons each of black and white sesame seeds. And then we're going to roll the whole log in the sesame seeds so that these cookies will have a nice edge. And also, again, as I said, for taste. As with the pork floss, the sesame seeds do not have to be toasted, as they will toast in the oven when the cookie is baking. Now we're going to store the cookie in the freezer for about 15 minutes or so that it firms up enough for us to slice. I just cut these in half just because the log was kind of too long. So now I preheated the oven to 325 Fahrenheit or 165 Celsius. Once the cookie logs are nice and firmly frozen, I can slice them off and bake. And I'm slicing the cookies into 1/2 centimeter slices, so they aren't too thin and this prevents them from falling apart. I place these on a baking sheet not too far apart just because they don't puff up that much, and because there's high moisture content in the ricotta cheese, they take quite a while to bake, about 15 to 20 minutes. You can also make this a sweet cookie, and that starts by adding vanilla paste and kneading that into the dough. And then exactly the same with the savory dough. You want to roll this dough out to a large rectangle, about 20 centimeters by 30 centimeters and half a centimeter in thickness, and then making sure that you neaten the edge that you will start rolling from. For this filling, I decided to do a chocolate orange filling, so I'm just grating the zest of one thoroughly washed orange and then spreading it over the surface of the rectangle, and then sprinkling with a generous amount of hot chocolate powder. So this already has sugar in it, and it's about a quarter cup of hot chocolate powder. Again, start rolling from the edge and then rolling up, making sure that the log is as tight as possible. And then to decorate on the outside, you don't have to do this, but I decided to just roll the entire log in more hot chocolate powder, just so that you get a nice edge. And again, roll this up, put it in the freezer for about 15 minutes to firm up, and then slice into half centimeter pinwheels, place on a lined baking sheet, and they bake for about the same time, 15 to 20 minutes, in an oven that's 325 Fahrenheit or about 165 degrees Celsius. And as you can see, I made a double batch and just baked them on the same tray, and that's perfectly fine, as long as they're not touching each other. You can fit quite a few cookies onto one sheet, just because these cookies don't puff up that much, and also because these are really great giant baking sheets. They fit just on one level and they bake evenly. I don't have to worry about uneven baking on different levels. It's very exciting. So these are how the cookies look when they come out. The pork floss toasted a bit in the oven along with the sesame seeds. It smells really nice. Thank you so much for watching. Follow me on Instagram if you want to see other interesting goodies I make, or also just other interesting moments of my life. Feel free to comment below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!